Imagine a perfect life shattered by a simple DNA test. A young wife discovers 1% African ancestry, her husband jokes she's his black queen. But she feels a primal pull, sneaking to a club where she meets a massive bouncer who awakens forbidden desires. As their connection deepens, shocking family ties emerge, blurring lines between passion and taboo. What happens when blood calls louder than vows? In the vast metropolis of New York, where the skyscrapers of Manhattan scratched the sky like the claws of a gigantic beast, I woke up alongside Jack in our cozy apartment on the Upper East Side. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting stripes of light on the snow-white sheets, and the air was filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee from our favorite machine. My light hair scattered across the pillow, I stretched, smiling at my husband who was already standing by the window in just his boxers, gazing at the morning traffic below. Jack, a sturdy guy with a short haircut and an eternal smirk, turned and winked. "Good morning, my queen. Ready for another day in this circus?" We laughed, as we always did in the mornings, and I, throwing on a silk robe, headed to the kitchen to spread avocado on the toasts. Our life was so predictable, so perfect, my job at the advertising agency, his freelance work in IT, shared dinners in small bistros, and rare weekends in Central Park. No children yet, but plans for the future hovered in the air like cigarette smoke in an evening bar. When the courier delivered the package with the ancestry test results, that whimsical idea we ordered online after watching a documentary, I tore open the envelope with childlike excitement. "Look, Jack. I'm a purebred Irish with a dash of Scandinavian." "And you?" Jack, chewing his toast, glanced at my sheet and froze. His eyebrows crept up. "Wait. You have 1% African blood here." "Huh, my black queen. Now you'll dance to hip-hop instead of our classics?" He laughed, slapping me on the shoulder, but I didn't join in. I stared at the figure as if it were a crack in our perfect facade. That evening, when Jack fell asleep to the hum of the air conditioner, I sat by the window, looking at the city lights, and felt something stir inside me, not a joke, but an echo, distant and insistent. The next day, I discreetly deleted the test app from my phone, but that 1% had already lodged in my mind like a splinter. As days passed, the routine of our life continued, but that tiny revelation began to weave its way into my thoughts like threads in a tapestry I hadn't noticed before. I'd catch myself during lunch breaks at the agency, scrolling through articles about mixed ancestries, wondering about the stories hidden in bloodlines. Jack kept joking about it lightly, calling me his queen of the savannah over dinner, but each time, it landed differently, stirring a curiosity that felt both thrilling and unsettling. Our apartment, with its minimalist decor and views of the bustling streets, started to feel a bit confining, as if the walls were pressing in with unspoken questions. One afternoon, while walking through Central Park after work, the leaves rustling underfoot in the crisp air, I paused by a bench and pulled out my phone to search for more on genetic surprises. Stories flooded in, of people discovering hidden heritages, reshaping their identities overnight. It made me reflect on my own family tales, the vague mentions of distant relatives from across oceans, and how that 1% might connect to something real, something alive in me. By evening, back home with Jack cooking pasta in the kitchen, his laughter echoing as he shared a work anecdote, I smiled outwardly but inside, the echo grew louder, urging me toward unknown paths. That night, as we lay in bed, the city noise a constant lullaby outside, Jack's arm draped over me in familiar comfort, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with images of African rhythms, distant drums calling across time, blending with the honks of taxis below. It wasn't just curiosity anymore, it felt like a pull, a magnetic force drawing me away from our predictable world. I turned to watch Jack's peaceful face, wondering if he sensed the shift, but he slept soundly, oblivious to the storm brewing in my veins. The following morning brought clarity in a strange way. Over coffee, as Jack rushed out for a meeting, I decided to explore further. Alone in the apartment, sunlight again playing on the floors, I opened my laptop and delved deeper into genealogy sites, tracing possible links. Hours slipped by, the screen glowing with maps of migrations, stories of blended lineages from centuries ago. It excited me, this hidden part of myself, like uncovering a secret room in a familiar house. But as the day wore on, a subtle anxiety crept in, mixing with the thrill. What if this changed everything? By lunchtime, I stepped out into the vibrant streets of Manhattan, the crowd swirling around me like a human river. Skyscrapers loomed, their glass facades reflecting the chaos, and I felt a kinship with the diversity pulsing through the city. Stopping at a cafe, sipping an iced latte amid the chatter, I overheard conversations in various accents, each carrying echoes of far-off origins. It reinforced my resolve that 1% wasn't a flaw but a bridge to something profound. Returning home, the apartment felt different, still cozy, yet now laced with possibility. As evening fell, Jack returned with takeout from our favorite Thai place, and we ate on the couch, watching a show. His jokes flowed as usual, but when he teased about my royal heritage, I forced a laugh, hiding the depth of my introspection. Later, in the quiet hours, staring at the ceiling, I realized this was no passing fancy, it was awakening a part of me long dormant, promising adventures beyond our safe haven. The city lights twinkled outside, inviting me to step into the unknown, and for the first time, I felt truly alive in the gray concrete jungle. Weeks later, the metropolis of New York pulsed under the rain, washing the dirt off the asphalt of Brooklyn, where I decided to stroll alone after work. Jack was busy with a project, and I didn't mind. My thoughts kept returning to that joke, to that 1%, which now seemed not a coincidence but a call. My black queen, Jack would repeat in bed, kissing my neck, and each time it resonated in me with a strange warmth, not loving, but something primal. I began noticing black passers-by on the streets, their confident gait, the rhythm in their movements that had previously slipped past me. That evening, under the neon signs of bars in Williamsburg, I entered the club Night Rhythm, a place where the bass pounded against my ribs, and bodies merged in a whirlwind of light and sweat. In a tight black dress that Jack had never seen, I pushed through the crowd, feeling my heart beat in unison with the music. I ordered a gin and tonic at the bar and looked around, searching for, what? The call of blood, as I told myself. At the entrance stood he, the bouncer named Tyrone, huge like a statue of dark granite, with shoulders that could fill a doorway. His eyes, dark and piercing, met mine across the room, and I felt a prick, not fear, but recognition. When a drunk guest elbowed me, Tyrone was there instantly, his hand on my shoulder heavy yet careful. "Everything all right, miss?" His voice boomed over the music, and in that moment, under the flashes of the strobe light, I nodded, unable to look away. We started talking at the bar, his laugh low and vibrating like a bass guitar, and I shared about the test, about my husband's joke, without mentioning names. Tyrone smiled. 1%? That's like a drop in the ocean, but the ocean remembers everyone. As the night wound down, he escorted me to a taxi, and his fingers lingered on my wrist a bit longer than necessary, leaving a trail of warmth that I felt all the way home. The rain continued to drum against the window of the cab as I leaned back, replaying the encounter in my mind. Tyrone's presence had been overwhelming, not just physically but in the way he seemed to understand that hidden part of me without words. The city lights blurred through the wet glass, mirroring the confusion swirling inside. Why had I gone there? Was it really the call, or just boredom in my perfect life with Jack? By the time I reached our apartment, the warmth from his touch had faded, but the memory lingered, a subtle shift in my routine world. The next morning, as I sipped coffee in our kitchen, Jack rushed around preparing for his day, oblivious to my distraction. "You got home late last night," he remarked casually, planting a kiss on my forehead. I mumbled something about traffic and work emails, but inside, guilt flickered like a faulty neon sign. Yet, it was mixed with excitement. The club had awakened something, a rhythm that echoed in my steps as I headed to the agency. Throughout the day at work, amid meetings and creative pitches, my mind wandered back to Night Rhythm. The bass, the crowd, Tyrone's voice, they all blended into a vivid daydream that made the fluorescent office lights feel dim. Colleagues noticed my absent-mindedness, asking if I was okay, and I brushed it off with a smile, but deep down, that 1% felt more alive, urging me to explore further. That evening, back home, Jack and I shared a quiet dinner, pasta from a local spot, wine on the balcony overlooking the twinkling skyline. He teased me again about my heritage, his hand on mine warm and familiar, but the words hit differently now, stirring that primal warmth instead of amusement. I laughed it off, but as we went to bed, his embraces felt routine, lacking the electric charge from the previous night. Sleep evaded me, the rain pattering outside like a persistent whisper. I thought of Tyrone's words about the ocean remembering every drop. Did that mean my blood held memories too? Visions of ancestral stories flooded my mind, blending with the modern pulse of the city, creating a tapestry of curiosity that pulled me away from the safety of our life. A few days passed in a blur of work and home, but the pull grew stronger. I found myself researching clubs like Night Rhythm online during lunch breaks, reading reviews about the vibrant nightlife in Brooklyn. It wasn't just escapism, it felt like connecting to that hidden fraction of myself, a bridge to identities I never knew I craved. One afternoon, walking through the rain-slicked streets of Manhattan after a meeting, I noticed more, the sway in people's walks, the music spilling from cars, all resonating with that inner rhythm. It made me feel less alone in my secret quest, as if the city itself was conspiring to draw me deeper into this exploration. That weekend, Jack suggested a movie night, but I pleaded a headache and stayed in, my mind elsewhere. As he dozed on the couch, I slipped out, telling myself it was just for a walk. But my feet led me back toward Brooklyn, the subway rumbling beneath me like the bass from the club, building anticipation. Arriving at Night Rhythm again, the rain had stopped, leaving puddles reflecting the neon glow. I wore the same dress, feeling bold and exposed as I entered. The crowd was thicker, the music louder, and there he was, Tyrone at the door, his nod of recognition sending a thrill through me. Back so soon, he grinned, his voice cutting through the noise. We talked briefly at the entrance, between his duties checking IDs. He shared snippets of his life, growing up in Harlem, the struggles and triumphs, and I listened, mesmerized by the depth in his stories. It contrasted with Jack's light-hearted tales, grounding me in a reality that felt raw and authentic. As the night progressed, I danced a little, letting the rhythm take over, bodies brushing in the crowd but my eyes often finding Tyrone. When a rowdy group got too close, he intervened again, his protective stance making me feel seen in a way I hadn't before. Gratitude mixed with that strange warmth, lingering as I sipped my drink. Toward closing, he walked me out once more, the cool night air a relief from the heat inside. "You seem like you're searching for something," he observed, his hand brushing mine accidentally, or was it? I nodded, sharing more about the test's impact, and his understanding nod sealed a silent connection. The taxi ride home was filled with reflection, the warmth from his touch persisted, but now accompanied by questions. Was this betrayal, or just discovery? Jack slept soundly when I returned, his arm reaching out in habit, but I lay awake, the city's hum mirroring my inner turmoil. Days turned into a pattern, work, home with Jack, but my thoughts strayed to Night Rhythm. I started noticing cultural events online, festivals, music nights, that tied into African heritage, fueling my curiosity without action yet. One evening, after a tense day at the agency, I confided in a vague way to a friend over coffee, mentioning the test but omitting the club. Her casual dismissal, "It's just 1%. Irritated me, highlighting how deeply it affected me compared to others. That pushed me back to the club midweek, the rain returning as if to wash away doubts. Tyrone was there, his smile welcoming, and we talked longer this time, moving to a quieter corner. He spoke of his own ancestry searches, the pride and pain intertwined, resonating with my emerging feelings. As patrons thinned out, our conversation deepened, shared laughs, subtle touches that hinted at more. The air charged with possibility, but I pulled back, citing the time, though the warmth followed me home like a shadow. Jack noticed my late nights, questioning gently over breakfast. "Exploring the city more?" he asked, and I nodded, weaving half-truths about solo walks. Guilt nod, but the call overpowered it, promising fulfillment beyond our routine. Research became obsessive, books on genealogy borrowed from the library, apps tracking heritage. Each discovery amplified that primal pull, making everyday life with Jack feel muted in comparison. A storm hit the city one night, thunder echoing like drums. I braved it to night rhythm, drawn irresistibly. Tyrone sheltered me at the door, his concern genuine, leading to a heartfelt talk about identities lost and found. That encounter shifted something, his words lingered, the ocean remembers, becoming a mantra. Leaving, his farewell touch sent waves through me, blending emotion and anticipation. Home felt confining now, Jack's jokes about my queen status ringing hollow. I smiled through it, but inside, a divide grew, the call becoming a roar. Weeks blended, my visits regular. Tyrone and I built a rapport, stories exchanged like gifts. His world, Harlem roots, club life, contrasted my Upper East Side polish, enriching my perspective. One night, amid flashing lights, a dance floor mishap brought him close again, his steadiness calming. Gratitude evolved into affinity, hints of deeper connection unspoken. The ride home that time was contemplative, the rain had cleared, stars peeking through clouds. I pondered the risks, but the warmth outweighed them, fueling a secret life parallel to my marriage. Jack's project ended, freeing his time, and he suggested more couple outings. I agreed outwardly, but inwardly resisted, cherishing my solitary explorations. A close call came when he found a club flyer in my bag. "What's this?" he asked lightly. I laughed it off as a work event, but tension simmered, threatening exposure. Undeterred, I returned, Tyrone's presence an anchor in the chaos. Our talks turned personal, vulnerabilities shared under the bass drum. As summer approached, the city heated up, mirroring my internal fire. The 1% no longer a splinter but a flame, guiding me toward unknown horizons. One pivotal evening, rain pouring again, I arrived soaked. Tyrone dried me with a towel from behind the bar, his care intimate yet respectful. Conversation flowed into the early hours, bonds strengthening. Leaving, his lingering gaze promised more, the warmth now a constant companion, reshaping my world one pulse at a time. The pattern solidified, deception at home, discovery at the club. Jack's affection remained, but mine waned, replaced by this new rhythm. Reflection in quiet moments revealed growth, I felt more whole, that primal warmth integrating into my identity. Yet, doubts crept, was this fair to Jack? The call silenced them, insisting on pursuit. Tyrone shared more of his life, dreams beyond bouncing, perhaps studying history. His ambition inspired, drawing me closer. A night of crowded energy led to a quiet moment outside, stars above, where hints of affinity surfaced, leaving me breathless. Homeward, the city's lights seemed brighter, my steps lighter, the secret nourishing my soul. As the chapter of exploration unfolded, I knew change was inevitable, the whisper in the crowd becoming a voice I couldn't ignore. The second act began with a lie so small it felt harmless, like a single drop of ink in clear water, yet it spread. I kissed Jack goodbye and told him the girls from work were dragging me to some rooftop bar in meatpacking. He grinned, said, "Don't let them corrupt my black queen," and went back to his code. I took the subway to Brooklyn instead, heart already racing before the train even left the station. Tyrone was waiting in the alley behind Night Rhythm, leaning against the brick wall under the buzzing yellow lamp, smoke curling from the cigarette between his fingers. The rain had paused, leaving everything wet and shining. When he saw me, he dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his boot, and opened his arms without a word. I walked straight into them. The smell of rain on his leather jacket, the heat rolling off his chest, the way his hands settled at the small of my back, everything felt inevitable. We didn't go inside the club anymore. The alley became ours. A rusted fire escape, dumpsters, the distant thump of bass through the walls, that was the cathedral where I began to worship something I didn't yet have a name for. He talked about his childhood in the Grant houses, about his grandmother's stories of Louisiana before the flood, about the first time he spit on his own blood after a fight and understood it was the same color as everyone else's. I listened like a woman hearing her own heartbeat for the first time. Some nights we just stood there for hours, shoulders touching, sharing breath. Other nights the space between us shrank until it disappeared. When he traced the faint scar on my wrist from a childhood accident, the air thickened like fog rolling in off the East River. I leaned in, helpless, and felt his warmth seep through every layer of cloth and pretense. There was no haste, only recognition, an ancient, wordless conversation between blood that had been separated too long. I always went home flushed, hair damp with rain or something else, lips swollen from the pressure of secrets. Jack would be asleep, one arm flung across my side of the bed as if reserving my place. I would slide in beside him, careful not to wake him, and lie perfectly still while guilt and exhilaration fought for dominion inside my ribcage. The ceiling fan spun lazy circles above us, and I counted them until dawn, tasting salt and smoke on my tongue. The lies multiplied like subway rats. Yoga class. Client dinner. Migraine. Jack never questioned me, he trusted me the way people trust gravity. That trust began to feel like a blade pressed gently against my throat, sharp, constant, invisible to everyone but me. One Thursday the sky split open just as I reached the alley. Rain lashed sideways, sirens dopplered somewhere up Fulton. Tyrone pulled me under the narrow overhang by the club's back door. Water streamed off his close-cropped hair, down the strong column of his neck, into the collar of his black t-shirt. Lightning flashed, for an instant his eyes reflected silver. He said my name, Emma, like it was a prayer he'd been saving for centuries. Then his hands were on my waist, lifting me effortlessly until my back met cold brick and his mouth found mine. The storm raged, but inside that kiss everything went perfectly quiet. When we broke apart, thunder rolled directly overhead, so close it rattled my bones. I laughed into his shoulder, drunk on danger and rain and him. I arrived home after 3 that morning. Jack was sitting at the kitchen island in his boxers, laptop open, eyes red from staring at code. He looked up, frowned at my soaked hair and ruined makeup. Jesus, Em, what happened to you? I told him the girls and I got caught in the storm leaving the bar. He studied me for a long moment, long enough for my heart to stop, then closed the laptop and came to me. He peeled off my wet dress right there in the hallway, wrapped me in a towel, carried me to bed like I was something precious that might break. His tenderness almost undid me. I buried my face in his neck so he wouldn't see the tears. The next week I started wearing turtlenecks in July to hide the faint marks Tyrone's beard left on my throat. I bought new perfume, something darker, spicier, to cover the scent of club smoke that clung to my skin. Jack noticed everything and nothing. You smell different, he said once, nuzzling my neck. Sexy as hell. I laughed too loudly and changed the subject. Our alley meetings grew bolder. Tyrone would text me a single black queen emoji when the club slowed down, and I would find a way to escape whatever boring dinner or Netflix night Jack had planned. Some nights we talked genealogy, he was taking night classes at City College, building family trees for strangers, chasing ghosts across oceans. He showed me grainy scans of ship manifests, names of ancestors who survived the Middle Passage. When he spoke their names aloud, voice low and reverent, I felt them listening. One night he pulled up my ancestry results on his phone, the screenshot I'd sent him weeks earlier, and zoomed in on that tiny sliver marked Sub-Saharan African. This ain't noise, Emma, he said. This is memory. Then he placed my hand over his heart so I could feel how hard it was beating. Mine answered in the same rhythm. The brick wall scraped my back as the distance between us vanished again, slow and deliberate, until the only thing that existed was heat and breath and the absolute certainty that I belonged there. Afterward, walking to the subway in the sodium glow, I caught my reflection in a darkened storefront window. The woman looking back at me was a stranger, eyes brighter, mouth softer, skin luminous with secrets. I didn't recognize her, but I wanted to follow her anywhere. Jack started asking questions I couldn't answer without lying. Why was I so tired? Why did I flinch when he touched my neck? Why did I keep checking my phone with that secret little smile? I fed him half-truths and whole silences. Each evasion carved another piece out of what we used to be. The guilt was becoming physical, a weight on my chest that woke me at 4 a.m., gasping. Yet the moment Tyrone's shadow fell across the alley entrance, the weight dissolved. I was weightless in his arms, reborn every time he said my name like it had always been his to say. One humid night in late August, the air so thick you could chew it, we stayed in the alley until the sky began to pale. Tyrone traced the line of my collarbone with one careful finger and told me about a cousin he'd found through DNA, someone living in Baton Rouge who shared his exact cheekbones. Blood finds blood, he said. Doesn't matter how many generations try to hide it. I shivered despite the heat, because I felt it happening to me in real time. The city around us was waking, delivery trucks, garbage men, early joggers, but we remained cocooned in the last pocket of night, unwilling to let go. When I finally stepped out of the alley, the first rays of sun hit my face like judgment. I smelled like him, tasted like him, carried him under my skin. And for the first time I didn't rush home to shower it off. I let it linger. I wanted Jack to smell it on me. I wanted everything to burn. Because I was no longer the woman who had laughed at a stupid ancestry joke over avocado toast. I was becoming something older, hungrier, and infinitely more dangerous. And the most terrifying part, the part that made me wet my lips with anticipation instead of fear, was that I couldn't wait to meet her all the way. A month later, New York drowned in summer swelter, the air thick and unyielding like a damp blanket draped over the city. In our Upper East Side apartment, the air conditioners hummed at full throttle, fighting a losing battle against the heat seeping through the windows. I'd started slipping away more often, murmuring excuses about yoga in the center, to Jack, who nodded absently while glued to his screen. The lies came easier now, slipping off my tongue like sweat down my back, but each one left a residue, a sticky reminder that our perfect life was fraying at the edges. Tyrone led me into his world, not the pounding chaos of the club, but something quieter, more intimate, the dimly lit basement of an old brownstone in Harlem, where a circle of like-minded souls gathered around folding tables laden with laptops and yellowed printouts. They were genealogists by passion, amateurs chasing the ghosts of family trees pruned by history's cruel shears. Under the flicker of bare bulbs and the musty scent of forgotten archives, I felt a pull, as if the walls themselves whispered invitations to belong. The group was diverse, retired teachers with wire-rimmed glasses, young artists sketching migration maps, elders whose voices carried the cadence of jazz records from another era. Faces reminiscent of Tyrone's, with high cheekbones and deep-set eyes, dotted the room, and their stories wove a tapestry of loss and reclamation. A great-grandfather sold south from Virginia, a lineage severed by Ellis Island clerks too hurried to spell names right. I sat on a metal chair that creaked under me, notebook in lap, absorbing it all like parched earth after rain. One evening, as the meeting wrapped and members shuffled out into the humid night, Tyrone lingered by the door, his silhouette framed against the stairwell light. He leaned close, breath warm against my ear. "Your test is the door, Emma. And I'm the key." The words hung there, simple yet loaded, unlocking a chamber in me I hadn't known was locked. We stayed behind, the echo of voices fading into the drip of a leaky pipe, and in that suspended quiet, our hands found each other across the table. The connection deepened in those stolen post-meeting moments, the half-lit room still humming with the residue of shared revelations. We'd lean into one another, not with the frantic urgency of the alley, but with a deliberate slowness, like roots seeking purchase in cracked concrete. It was more than fleeting heat, a ritual of awakening, where the pulse in my veins seemed to sync with his, affirming that the 1% wasn't anomaly but anthem. Afterward, I'd straighten my blouse, smooth my hair, and step into the street feeling fortified, as if I'd drawn strength from an underground aquifer. But the repercussions arrived swiftly, insidious as the summer humidity that fogged our bedroom windows. Jack began to notice the shifts, my distraction at dinner, eyes glazing over mid-conversation, the faint trace of unfamiliar cologne on the scarf I'd absent-mindedly left in my purse. One twilight evening on our balcony, the skyline a glittering distraction beyond the railing, he poured Merlot into our glasses with deliberate care. "Something's off, Em. You're like a ghost haunting our own home." His voice was soft, laced with concern that twisted like a knife in my gut. I forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach my eyes, and sipped the wine. "Just work, honey. This campaign's draining me dry." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I swallowed it down, watching the concern flicker across his face before he let it go. pulling me into a hug that felt increasingly like an anchor dragging me under. Inside, I trembled, a storm cloud gathering over Central Park, dark and inevitable. One slip, one unguarded glance at my phone, and the fragile edifice would crumble. Tyrone, meanwhile, delved deeper into my past with the fervor of a miner sensing gold. In a rush of trust one night, I'd shared my raw test data, the digital blueprint of my bloodline, and he fed it into his sprawling genealogy database, cross-referencing against archives he'd built over years. Late one night after a particularly charged gathering, stories of reunited siblings, of DNA matches that bridged oceans, he drew me aside as the last attendees filed up the stairs, their footsteps echoing like retreating thunder. The basement air still vibrated with the low hum of voices, sweat and paper mingling in the stale warmth. Under the solitary lamp's harsh glow, he flipped open his laptop, the screen casting blue shadows on his face. "Look here, Emma. Your branch, it crosses mine. 2 centuries back, in Louisiana bayous, your great-great-grandmother and my great-great-grandfather, they were entangled. Too entangled. You're my third cousin, once removed." The revelation suspended in the air like cigarette smoke curling in the New York haze, and I froze, bracing for revulsion to crash over me. But horror didn't come. Instead, a wave crested, not disgust, but a twisted relief, perverse in its clarity, as if scattered puzzle pieces had snapped into place with a satisfying click. It explained the inexplicable warmth, the insistent call that had upended my world. This wasn't chance collision but convergence of lines long diverged. The air between us thickened, charged with newfound gravity, and I reached for him, our touch in the dimness shifting from exploration to affirmation, a ritual where bloodlines harmonized, the shared heritage amplifying every sensation into something ordained. That night, as the taxi idled in traffic crossing the Brooklyn Bridge, I gazed down at the dark ribbon of the East River below, its surface rippling under sodium lights. The secret we'd unearthed wasn't a burden but a ballast, grounding me in a strength I hadn't possessed before. Tyrone's hand rested on my knee, a silent vow, and for the first time, doubt receded like the tide, leaving me resolute on this hidden shore. The following days blurred into a heightened awareness, the city's summer pulse mirroring my own accelerated rhythm. At work, pitching ad concepts in air-conditioned boardrooms, I'd catch myself tracing invisible family trees on my notepad, the ink lines mimicking the entangled branches Tyrone had shown me. Colleagues chattered about beach weekends, but my mind wandered to those basement gatherings, the sense of tribe that had eluded me in my polished Upper East Side bubble. Jack's scrutiny intensified subtly, questions about my yoga glow, a hand lingering too long on my arm as if testing for fractures. Over breakfast one muggy morning, bagels and cream cheese steaming on the counter, he fixed me with that earnest gaze. "You've been distant. Is there someone else pulling you away?" My heart stuttered, but I deflected with a laugh, blaming deadlines and heat exhaustion. The evasion left me hollow, yet the pull toward Harlem overrode the ache, drawing me back like a compass to true north. Another meeting in the basement unfolded like a symphony of rediscovery, a woman in her 60s unveiling photos of a freedman ancestor who'd walked from Georgia to New York post-emancipation, her voice cracking with pride. I contributed tentatively, sharing snippets of my Irish roots laced with that elusive 1%, and the room leaned in, nodding as if my story was a thread in their collective weave. Tyrone watched from across the circle, his pride a quiet flame that warmed me across the space. As the group dispersed into the balmy evening, street vendors hawking iced drinks under buzzing lamps, Tyrone and I claimed the shadowed corner once more. His whisper revisited, door and key, now laced with the weight of kinship. Our embrace there, amid the settling dust of tales told, felt sacramental, bodies aligning not in conquest but communion, the ritual stirring a deeper resonance, as if ancestral eyes approved from the ether. The drive home through Midtown's neon-veined arteries brought introspection, billboards flashed promises of escape, but I saw only mirrors to my dual life. Jack waited with takeout sushi on the coffee table, his smile tentative as we ate cross-legged on the rug. "Missed you tonight," he murmured, feeding me a piece with chopsticks. Guilt surged, hot and immediate, but I masked it with affection, wondering how long the facade could hold before the cracks spiderwebbed. Tyrone's research consumed him, late-night texts buzzing my phone with updates, census records from 1852, a plantation ledger hinting at forbidden liaisons. Each ping was a breadcrumb leading deeper into our shared abyss, transforming curiosity into conviction. One sweltering afternoon, skipping a team lunch, I met him at a Harlem cafe, iced coffee sweating on the Formica table as he sketched our converging timelines on a napkin. The basement called again midweek, the air conditioner broken, forcing fans to stir the humid soup. Stories flowed, of a DNA match reuniting half-siblings separated by adoption, tears mingling with laughter. I felt woven in, no longer observer but participant, my voice gaining strength as I voiced questions about those Louisiana shadows. Tyrone's glances across the room were anchors, steadying me in the emotional tide. Post-meeting, the ritual evolved. In the dim alcove, our proximity ignited not frenzy but fusion, a silent acknowledgement of blood's inexorable draw. The touch lingered, imprinting patterns of belonging that no shower could erase, leaving me buoyant as I navigated the subway's rattling veins back downtown. Jack confronted the changes head-on during a rare quiet evening, thunder rumbling distantly as we shared gelato on the fire escape. "You're slipping away, Em. Talk to me." His vulnerability cracked my armor, tears pricking as I wove tales of professional stress, omitting the Harlem heartbeats. The lie fortified the wall between us, yet in its shadow, I glimpsed freedom's edge. Delving further, Tyrone uncovered a faded daguerreotype online, a woman with my jawline, standing beside a man whose brow echoed his own, dated 1847. The image blurred on my screen that night, Jack snoring beside me, and emotion welled, not shame, but a fierce possessiveness over this reclaimed fragment. The next gathering pulsed with energy, a guest speaker recounting oral histories from Gullah communities, rhythms lacing his words like improvised solos. I absorbed it voraciously, feeling the 1% expand, coloring my worldview in richer hues. Tyrone pulled me aside afterward, his voice a rumble, "See? Roots don't die, they adapt." Our ritual followed, a hushed ceremony where connection transcended flesh, binding us in predestined harmony. Taxi lights streaked past as I crossed the bridge again, the river below a metaphor for submerged truths rising. The secret empowered me, transmuting vulnerability into vitality. I was no longer adrift but rooted, the asphalt above concealing depths that sustained. Summer's peak brought relentless heat waves, mirroring the fever in my dual existence. Office days dragged under fluorescent glare, but evenings in the basement bloomed with purpose, mapping migrations, decoding surnames twisted by enslavers' pens. Each session layered on belonging, faces becoming familiar, voices a chorus to my solo strain. Jack's patience frayed, a forgotten earring in my purse sparked a quiet argument, his hurt eyes accusing without words. "Who's making you this secretive?" I deflected with kisses, the intimacy hollow yet habitual, buying time as the threat loomed larger, a gathering storm over our skyline. Tyrone's final revelation came unannounced, a voice note played in the basement's hush, audio from a Louisiana archive, a clerk reading wills from 1861, names entwining ours. Listening, chills raced despite the mugginess, the kinship crystallizing into irrefutable fact. That night's embrace in the alcove was transformative, recognition deepening to reverence, the ritual a vow etched in shared pulse. Emerging into the street, Harlem's pulse synced with mine, I felt invincible, the blood's song drowning out distant sirens. Homeward bound, the bridge's cables hummed like harp strings, and reflection settled, this entanglement wasn't diminishment but amplification, forging strength from forbidden soil. The city sprawled below, oblivious, but I carried its undercurrents now, empowered by roots that refused to yield. The third act crashed into our lives like the wail of a police siren slicing through midnight, sharp, unrelenting, dragging us from the shadows into blinding light. It started in the steam of our bathroom, where I stood under the shower's hot spray, letting water cascade over me like a futile attempt to wash away the night's secrets. Jack, ever the tech wizard, had slipped into the kitchen with my phone left charging on the counter. His fingers danced across the screen, unlocking it with the code he knew too well, delving into deleted messages and browser histories like a digital archaeologist unearthing bones. By the time I emerged, towel-wrapped and humming a half-remembered jazz tune from the basement, he was already at the stove, flipping eggs with mechanical precision, his jaw set in that quiet storm I recognized from deadline crunches. Breakfast unfolded in the sun-drenched kitchen, coffee steaming in mismatched mugs, the panoramic view of Manhattan sprawling beyond the window like a gilded cage, towers piercing the sky, traffic a distant river of ants. Jack set the plates down with deliberate clink, then fixed me with eyes that had lost their morning sparkle. Who is Tyrone? The name hung there, casual as cream in coffee, but it curdled the air between us. I felt the blood drain from my face, a cold flush that made the room tilt. My fork hovered over the eggs, yolk breaking untouched. Just a colleague from work, honey. Nothing to it. The words tumbled out, practiced yet brittle, and I forced a sip of coffee to hide the tremor in my hands. He didn't buy it for a second. Those warm hazel eyes, once soft with easy affection, hardened into something unyielding, like asphalt slick after a downpour, reflective, treacherous. Jack nodded once, too slowly, and changed the subject to his latest freelance gig, but the seed was planted. From that moment, his IT instincts kicked into overdrive, subtle app trackers pinging locations, casual texts to my work friends disguised as check-ins, even a quick scan of our shared calendar for gaps I couldn't explain. I sensed it in the way he'd glance up from his laptop when I grabbed my keys, or how his hugs lingered a beat too long, testing for evasion. The apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt laced with invisible tripwires, every creak of the floorboards a potential alarm. Meanwhile, Tyrone and I plunged deeper into our hidden realm, venturing beyond the basement's musty confines to the wilder edges of Harlem, abandoned parks where chain-link fences sagged like weary sentinels, and ancient oaks stretched branches planted long before the first skyscraper scarred the horizon. We'd meet at dusk, slipping through gaps in the underbrush, the city's roar fading to a muffled hum as leaves rustled overhead like conspirators. There, on weathered benches scarred by graffiti and time, we'd unfurl our plans like forbidden maps, voices low against the chirp of crickets and distant train rumbles. Tyrone's presence grounded me, his broad frame a bulwark against the encroaching doubts that nipped at my heels during daylight hours. One such evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the East River in bruised purples, we found a secluded grove where moonlight filtered through the canopy like silver filigree. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and blooming night jasmine, the metropolis's clamor a faint underscore to our words. Tyrone's hand settled on my waist, heavy and assured, anchoring me as he leaned in. We're not alone in this, Emma. There are others, mixed blood, severed ties, echoes waiting to be heard. We'll build a clan, our own circle where that call isn't some punchline but the core truth binding us. His vision ignited something primal in me, a blueprint for community forged from fragments, and I traced the veins on his forearm, feeling the pulse of possibility sync with mine. Our talks wove intricate patterns that night, visions of gatherings in shadowed lofts, DNA kits passed like sacred relics, stories shared under pseudonyms to shield the vulnerable. Laughter bubbled up when he mimicked a skeptical relative dismissing trace percentages, but beneath it simmered resolve, a quiet fire kindling plans for outreach through online forums and whispered invites. The moon hung low, a watchful eye over the river's lazy flow, and as shadows deepened under the oaks, our conversation crested into silence, the kind that demands filling. Leaves whispered secrets in the breeze, and in that half-light, we drew closer, bodies aligning not in mere collision but convergence, a union where the tangled threads of kinship wove tighter, roots delving beneath concrete to clasp and hold, transforming taboo into unbreakable tether. The aftermath struck with the force of dawn's first glare, harsh and exposing. I returned home late, the park's earthy perfume clinging to my clothes like an accusation, only to find Jack waiting in the living room, lamplight casting long shadows across his face. My bag slipped from my shoulder as he rose, voice steady but edged with steel. "Where the hell have you been?" Before I could spin another yarn, he snatched the strap, hurling it to the floor in a clatter of keys and lipstick. Out tumbled the scarf, soft cashmere I'd worn to the park, now infused with Tyrone's cologne, that warm, spiced note that no amount of excuses could deny. He snatched it up, inhaling deeply, his expression crumpling from fury to something rawer, more dissecting. You sleeping with him? This, bouncer from some dive? And what's this bullshit about blood ties? The words lashed out, each one stripping away layers I'd so carefully rebuilt. I sank onto the couch, knees buckling, the weight of it all crashing down, the lies, the stolen nights, the irreversible pull. Tears welled unbidden, and in that fracture, the dam broke. I spilled everything, the test's mocking revelation, the insistent call that had lured me from our bed, the alley whispers evolving into basement confessions, the genealogy map revealing Tyrone as third cousin once removed. My voice cracked on the details, the air thick with the scent of spilled secrets and cooling takeout from dinner he'd eaten alone. Jack froze mid-pace, glass of water trembling in his hand, droplets scattering like fleeing thoughts. His face contorted, not in the explosive rage I'd braced for, but in something far more insidious, curiosity, sharp and probing, like a surgeon's scalpel glinting under theater lights. 1%? And he's your actual relative? Jesus, Emma, this is madness. Pure, unfiltered insanity. The words hung, laced with disbelief, yet he didn't bolt for the door or summon lawyers. Instead, he collapsed into the armchair opposite, fumbling for the whiskey decanter on the side table, pouring a generous measure that sloshed over the rim. His hand shook as he raised the glass, but his eyes, those cold asphalt eyes, locked onto mine with a hunger that chilled deeper than anger. He leaned forward, voice quivering on the edge of a precipice, blending wrath with an unholy fascination. Tell me more. How does it feel, this call? Does it explain everything? It was as if his old joke, my Black Queen, had metastasized into a living nightmare, twisting from light-hearted tease to grotesque reality. I haltingly obliged, describing the alley's electric hush, the basement's communal pulse, the park's moonlit vows, each revelation drawing him in rather than repelling. His questions came rapid fire, details of our shared ancestors, the mechanics of the DNA match, even probing the emotional undercurrents, his scotch-fueled intensity mirroring a man unraveling a code he'd written himself. By the time the bottle neared empty, the room swam in amber haze, and exhaustion claimed us both, collapsing into separate corners of the bed like combatants calling truce. Dawn crept in gray and unforgiving, the skyline mocking our wreckage with its indifferent gleam. I woke to Jack already at his desk, screens flickering with genealogy sites he'd pulled up overnight, our test results side by side with Tyrone's profile, lines intersecting in digital crimson. No accusations flew, instead, a tentative breakfast where he slid a mug my way, murmuring, I get it now. That 1%, it's not nothing. Relief warred with dread in my chest, had confession mended us, or merely invited him into the abyss? His surveillance apps went dormant, replaced by shared searches, but the undercurrent shifted, curiosity curdling into complicity. Tyrone sensed the fracture when I met him later that week, our park grove shrouded in afternoon mist rolling off the river. Something's changed in you, he observed, thumb brushing my temple, and I confessed the blow-up, Jack's unexpected entanglement. His brow furrowed, hand tightening on mine, but resolve hardened his gaze. He in or out? Clan's no place for half measures. We mapped contingencies under the oaks, backup meetups, encrypted chats, his plans for the group expanding to include safeguards, turning vulnerability into strategy. The air hummed with urgency, leaves shedding like old skins, and as dusk fell, our embrace reaffirmed the bond, roots delving deeper, unyielding against the storm. Back home, Jack's transformation unfolded in layers, dinners where he'd grill me not with suspicion but appetite for lore, whiskey nights dissecting Louisiana ledgers from 1839. Imagine it, your blood and mine now, through you, he'd muse, eyes alight with that strange brew of hurt and intrigue. It unnerved me, this pivot from betrayal to bystander, yet it bought breathing room, the apartment's tension easing into an uneasy alliance. I'd slip out 4 errands, returning to find him elbow-deep in forums, recruiting shadows of his own. One overcast afternoon, wandering Central Park's winding paths alone, the weight settled, Jack's curiosity wasn't absolution but infiltration, a Trojan horse into our sanctum. Ducks quacked indifferently on the pond, mirroring my fragmented reflection, and doubt gnawed, had I traded secrecy for scrutiny? Yet the call persisted, overriding the unease, pulling me toward the next park rendezvous where Tyrone waited, his silhouette a beacon amid the gathering gloom. Their worlds collided subtly at first, Jack accidentally liking a Harlem event post I'd scrolled past, Tyrone's texts pausing when I mentioned Jack's budding obsession. In the grove that evening, under a canopy heavy with impending rain, Tyrone's plans crystallized. We start small, 3, 4 of us. Test the waters, build from truth. His hand on my waist steadied the whirl in my mind, and as thunder grumbled distant threats, our union beneath the branches sealed intent, a fusion where lineage's twist became pillar, not fracture. The scene replayed in fragments that night, Jack's bag throw frozen in memory, the scarf's betrayal a scarlet thread. Over late-night tea, he probed deeper, does it feel like home with him? His vulnerability a mirror to my own, forcing me to confront the erosion of our once solid ground. Sleep came fitful, dreams of roots bursting concrete, sirens wailing in harmony. Morning brought fragile normalcy, shared jogs along the reservoir, Jack's pace matching mine as he vented theories on epigenetic memory. That 1% carries stories, We're all mixed if we look hard enough. His enthusiasm bordered mania, yet it wove him into the narrative, transforming rival into reluctant ally. I nodded, heart divided, the park's pull stronger despite the tether. Tyrone's text urged caution, watch your 6, as we plotted the clan's genesis, a neutral diner for first recruits, stories vetted for resonance. Meeting him solo grew riskier, stolen moments charged with the thrill of pursuit, our touches underdappled. New York, that concrete labyrinth where the skyscraper lights masked the underlying darkness, became our arena in a finale no one could have foreseen. The city pulsed with hidden energies, streets weaving like veins beneath the glowing facade, and in this maze, our lives converged in ways that defied expectation. Jack didn't walk away after the confrontation, instead, he dove in headfirst, drawn like a moth to the flame of our tangled secrets. A week after the blow-up, as tension still simmered in our apartment like leftover storm clouds, he cornered me in the kitchen one evening. Introduce me to Tyrone, he said flatly, pouring coffee with hands that barely shook. I need to understand what you've gotten yourself into. His words carried no ultimatum, just a quiet insistence that brooked no refusal, and I felt a chill snake down my spine, not fear, but the eerie calm before a pivot. I arranged the meeting with a mix of dread and curiosity, texting Tyrone under the table while Jack watched TV, oblivious to the undercurrents. The basement in Harlem felt different that night, the air thicker with anticipation as genealogists filed in under the harsh lamps, their voices a murmur of shared histories. Tyrone loomed against the wall, massive and vigilant, his eyes narrowing when Jack entered, bottle of whiskey clutched like a peace offering, or a weapon. I stood between them, a fragile bridge over an abyss, heart pounding as the group settled into chairs, unaware of the personal storm brewing. The session unfolded with stories of lost lineages, but my focus splintered, darting between Jack's forced smile and Tyrone's guarded stance. Words flew like barbed arrows once the formal talk began to wind down, Jack accusing betrayal with clipped precision, Tyrone countering with charges of ignorance, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. Beneath the verbal sparring bubbled something else, an undercurrent of mutual assessment, like two predators circling the same territory. The room emptied gradually, members drifting out with nods and handshakes, leaving the three of us in a silence soaked with mold and sweat, the lamps casting long shadows that danced on the walls. Tension coiled tight, ready to snap, but instead of fists, it shattered into confession. Jack locked eyes with Tyrone, voice steady despite the whiskey's edge, if she's your blood, then it's mine now too. That 1%, it's ours. In that suspended moment, under the weight of departed ghosts, we forged a pact, not rupture, but expansion, a unholy trinity bound by revelation. The clan was born that very night, emerging from the basement's dim womb like a secret society forged in fire. Tyrone brought his Harlem connections, whispers in barbershops, nods in corner stores, while I leveraged my office networks, slipping subtle invites into casual chats with colleagues harboring their own hidden curiosities. Jack contributed his tech prowess, hacking together encrypted apps to hunt lost siblings, scouring databases for matches that echoed our own tangled roots. We started small, convening in hidden bars where jazz played low and lights dimmed secrets. Quiet dinners unfolded with shared plates and guarded stories. DNA kits passed like sacred chalices to newcomers who arrived wide-eyed, drawn by the promise of belonging. Our rituals took shape in the abandoned parks of Harlem, under moonlit canopies where ancient oaks whispered approvals from their gnarled branches. We'd gather in circles, hands linked in the silver glow, sharing touches that sealed bonds, transforming what society deemed taboo into a source of power, like roots cracking through concrete, unyielding and vital. One such night, the air crisp with autumn's first bite, a new member confessed her own fractional heritage, tears gleaming as we welcomed her with embraces that hinted at deeper unions. The group swelled gradually, from our core trio to a dozen souls, mixed couples navigating blurred lines, solitaries whispering of percentages that redefined kin, all united by the call that had once been my solitary echo. Months blurred in a whirlwind of growth, the city our clandestine playground where neon veiled our movements. I'd watched Jack and Tyrone argue strategy over takeout in our apartment, their voices rising in passionate discord, Jack advocating digital outreach, Tyrone insisting on face-to-face trust, and feel a surge of triumph swell in my chest. The call of blood had conquered, reshaping our fractured marriage into something expansive, a web where jealousy dissolved into shared purpose. Evenings in the park evolved, rituals under the moon where connections deepened subtly, hands brushing in ways that affirmed lineage over law, each gathering strengthening the clan's invisible threads. One rainy afternoon, as puddles mirrored the gray sky on Lexington Avenue, I reflected on the transformation, how Jack's initial curiosity had morphed into zeal, his laptop humming late into nights with algorithms tracing potential recruits. Tyrone's skepticism had thawed, replaced by grudging respect for Jack's tools, and together they scouted online forums, pulling in a librarian from Queens with a surprising Senegalese link, a banker from Midtown whose test revealed Congolese roots. The clan met bi-weekly now, basement sessions spilling into park vigils, where stories intertwined like vines, fostering a sense of unbreakable kin. Yet cracks appeared subtly, like hairline fractures in the city's pavement. Jack's enthusiasm sometimes veered manic, eyes feverish as he mapped our extended family, and I'd catch him staring at me with that old possessive glint, whispering my black queen not as joke but mantra. Tyrone voiced concerns in private, his hand heavy on my shoulder during a stolen alley moment. He's in too deep, too fast. Watch for the break. But the momentum carried us, recruits arriving with kits in hand, their results weaving them into our fold, a teacher with Gambian traces, an artist blending Yoruba motifs into murals. The finale struck without warning, a deluge on a stormy evening when sirens wailed closer than the usual city din. We were mid-ritual in the basement, circled tight under flickering lamps, when doors burst open in a cacophony of shouts and flashing badges. Police swarmed like shadows given form, handcuffs clicking as anonymous tip, "Who's?" Jack's in a jealous relapse, unraveled everything. Chaos erupted, members scattering, Tyrone bolting through a back exit into the rain-slicked night, his massive frame vanishing into Harlem's embrace. Jack and I were hauled out, faces pressed to squad car windows as cameras flashed, headlines already brewing, elite Upper East Side couple in incest cult. Arrests cascaded into scandal, tabloids devouring our story with salacious glee, from ancestry test to forbidden clan, as the group splintered under scrutiny. Tyrone went underground, a ghost in the city's underbelly, while Jack and I faced interrogations in sterile rooms, our pact dissected under fluorescent glare. The divorce papers followed swiftly, signed in a lawyer's office overlooking the Hudson, but amid the wreckage bloomed an unexpected seed, the child growing within me, tests revealing not 1 but 15% of that resonant African bloodline, a living testament to our convergence. In the holding cell, concrete walls echoing distant clangs, I sat alone gazing through barred windows at Manhattan's indifferent spires. A smile crept unbidden to my lips, not at injustice, but triumph. The world had fractured around us, but the clan endured in me, in the unborn pulse, in the echoing call poised to ripple outward, sowing discord in other pristine facades. Jack, released on bail, paced our emptying apartment, phone pressed to ear as he plotted appeals, whispering fiercely, "This isn't the end, my black queen. It's the beginning." His voice carried over the line during my one call, igniting a spark in the cold, our legacy, twisted and tenacious, ready to reclaim the shadows. The aftermath unfolded in fragments, court dates looming like storm fronts, media hounds staking our building, friends vanishing like smoke. Yet in quiet moments, hand on my swelling belly, I felt the victory, the call amplified, not silenced, its rhythm syncing with the child's kicks. Tyrone's sporadic encrypted messages assured survival, plans were forming in exile, while Jack's legal maneuvers bought time, his obsession now a shield. Reflection came in waves during those jailed nights, the city's hum filtering through bars as a lullaby of chaos. What we'd built wasn't destroyed but dispersed, seeds scattered to germinate in unseen soil. The scandal stripped illusions, but in exposure lay power, the 1%, now 15, a banner for the dispossessed. Release pending trial brought uneasy freedom, Jack's apartment a ghost of our past, boxes stacked like accusations. We'd meet covertly in neutral cafes, plotting reunions, his hand hovering near mine with restrained hunger. The child became our anchor, ultrasounds revealing features blending our lines, a harbinger of the clan's resurrection. Tyrone resurfaced in coded drops, Harlem whispers guiding him to safe houses, his resolve unbroken. Blood calls blood, his message read, echoing our founding pact, and I envisioned the network we're forming, subtler, stronger, roots delving deeper beneath the asphalt. As autumn leaves blanketed Central Park, I walked alone, feeling the city's pulse mirror my own, resilient, defiant. The finale wasn't closure but catalyst, injustice fueling the fire that would consume and rebirth, our story a whisper spreading through the labyrinth, awakening others to the call. Jack's appeals dragged through winter, courtrooms a theater of indignation, but his whispers persisted, beginnings masked as ends. The child arrived amid turmoil, dark eyes gazing up with ancient wisdom, 15% a promise of continuance. In the end, as snow blanketed the spires, I stood at the window, babe in arms, smiling at the chaos we'd sown, the clan's echo reverberating, ready to shatter more facades in the unrelenting city.